Are you experiencing data quality issues in Salesforce? Do you know that these issues can lead to lower user adoption? If the information in Salesforce is inaccurate, it could be super frustrating for your users to enter in their own data. This frustration could cause them to stop using Salesforce altogether. So, what are some of the ways that you can solve this problem and ensure a smoother process for everyone involved? That's exactly what we're going to cover in this episode.
Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
Data is the lifeblood of any business's database, and Salesforce administrators understand that having clean data is vital to a company's success on the Salesforce platform. A poorly managed database may result in a decline in productivity and revenue for your business. As a result, it's critical to have procedures in place to improve data quality. User adoption plummets when a company's database is unreliable, as the organization's centralized database is untrustworthy. During this podcast interview, Andrew Fragis discusses the importance of data quality and how any company can boost its quality to increase end user adoption of Salesforce. He also reveals several strategies to improve data quality, which you can implement right away. Andrew Fragis is a Salesforce certified admin, Salesforce answer leader, and a product manager at Validity, based in Sydney, Australia. He has an intimate knowledge of CRM and Marketing Cloud products. Andrew is a huge fan of technology, innovation, and seizing new possibilities. He believes that there are two types of people: those who make things happen and those who watch what happens. Andrew, welcome to the Brainiate Show. How are you today?
Good, thanks, David. How are you?
I can't complain. So tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and who you are and how you got into the Salesforce community.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Andrew Fragis. I live down here in down under Sydney. I started off as a consultant a couple of years ago now, about 4 or 5 years ago. I was still at uni studying and happened to come across this opportunity to start in the consultant world. And the first thing I got asked on the first day was, "Have you ever heard about Salesforce?" And at the point of time, I was like, "What's Salesforce?" All I'm learning at uni is Agile, the traditional waterfall, not even that much of Agile focus. I'm just talking about waterfall and everything else. So that's where my interest started. Then as a consultant does, you spend more than your average time on projects. And I was there for about 3 years. And then I got approached by Validity, where I am today, to work as a customer success manager. And this changed my perspective in the world of Salesforce completely. So I went from helping customers out and being consultant to more of an ISV partner role. So that's, I've had both sides of the fences now, I would say. Ever since then, I've grown and now becoming a product manager here at Validity. So it's amazing how quick you can grow in the Salesforce community, even by putting in just like 10 minutes of your time to the answer leaders or just attending events. That's what I've found pretty good.
So, actually, let's dive a little bit more in the Salesforce Answer community. There are many folks in the Salesforce ecosystem that really know nothing about Salesforce Answers and what is it. So, can you explain a little bit about what is Salesforce Answers and your involvement in that whole niche of the Salesforce community?
Yeah, Salesforce Answer community is essentially is this one place where everyone can get together, ask questions. If you're stuck, if you're about to do an implementation, you don't know what path to take, or even if you just want general knowledge, you've looked at Trailhead, you've done the Trailheads, but things still don't make sense. You can come here and ask for help and anyone can help you out. And that's the best part. We're all sharing knowledge amongst each other. We're all empowering each other to go to that next step. In terms of my involvement of it, it started, I'd say, when COVID started last year, really. Like my full focus into Salesforce community and everything else started towards the back end of 2019 because I had a bit of more time, bit of breather from me, stop being a consultant and transitioning into this role. And I thought to myself, what's one way to give back? And that's to pass on my knowledge. And what's also the same way to learn at the same time? So I would say a question, I'll go and search it, do my own research into it, and then I'll find out. In terms of my involvement, I was, a bit of a humble brag here, but I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I was actually the answer leader for quite some time last year. And that's what hooked me in. It's the gamification of being number one, or like having that leaderboard. So yeah, that's really my involvement in the whole community and everything.
So it's all about giving back to the community while at the same time learning yourself and satisfying that competitive streak that you've got going.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely the competitive side of it as well is coming out.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about user adoption. There are so many organizations that put in so much time and effort and money in getting the Salesforce licenses and updating the configuration of Salesforce, migrating their legacy data from other systems into Salesforce. And then lo and behold, they realize that user adoption is low. People are still reluctant to use it or completely against using it for all sorts of reasons. They're relying on Excel spreadsheets or paper notepads. Sadly, this is a very common situation in many organizations, regardless of size, regardless of budget. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what you're seeing in terms of common issues about user adoption and how to best address them.
Yeah, I think you touched on some of the key points there, right? When it comes to enabling it, not even just a whole company, just another part of the business within that company. The user adoption is probably the biggest hurdle after you get past all the hurdles of migration, integration, and everything else, right?
Yeah.
The last one and probably the biggest one just before the finish line is user adoption. And what is making that issue the hardest is not having that concept of a champion, someone that can champion your product and someone that can champion your process. And even that is on top of that, you've got a whole bunch of users that are so used to this legacy system that it's very hard to change the way they work. Take, for example, myself. I'd worked on the Microsoft Outlook desktop app, and then all of a sudden, the desktop app for one day wasn't working on my computer. So I had to switch to the online version of it. I'm so hesitant on it. I was trying to get IT, fix the desktop app, get me back there. But now I'm using the online version every day, right? Because I found something different that the online version does that the desktop app doesn't. But in saying all that, like you've got users that are used to this old system, and going back to that point, they don't want to move on, or they expect Salesforce to do everything the old system does, look and feel everything. And you're never going to get there unless you spend the best of 10 years customizing your system to get there. The other thing that you want to look at, and the one you touched on that was super keen, is everyone's used to Excel. You always hear that my Excel does this. Why can't Salesforce reports, can't dashboards do this? So it's funny, right? Like you want to say yes. The consultant in me wants to say, we'll go build something, but it's more about retraining and re-educating of what's available. And that's the most, I would say, the most crucial part. A lot of mistakes made by businesses when it comes to user adoption is just training them in the system itself and saying, this is Salesforce, this is what it does, this is how you use it to do X, Y, Z for our business. But what you should be doing is, we used to be doing this, and this is how we did it in our old system. Right? This is how we accomplish the same steps in Salesforce. That's not enough when you come to it. It's when you get to that point, you've trained them and everything, it's still not enough. And that's where you look outside. You look for an ISV partner, you look for a bit of a custom solution to gather everything into one place and get it going, making it easier when it comes to it.
I agree with you 100%. And going back to the Excel example, what I've also found is that a lot of times the people asking for the Excel-like functionality, they don't even realize that what they're asking for is not practical, not sustainable. It's not going to help them to run their business. And I'll give you an example where I recently found myself in this situation with a prospect. I was talking to an organization that I not yet doing any business with. Turns out I actually don't want to do business with them. I don't want to take them on as a client because their expectations are completely unrealistic and impractical. Exactly to this point where they turned to me and they said that when their users log into Salesforce, they should have one screen that shows all of the leads, all of the opportunities, all of the tasks, all of the contacts, all of the accounts that they have in the system. And I turned to them and I said, that's not practical. If we wave the magic wand and I did exactly what you're asking for, it will be completely overwhelming. And I basically said, what you're asking for is to have everything on one single, forget even spreadsheet, on one tab in a spreadsheet, not even multiple tabs. As I asked them, have you ever gone into a supermarket and only found one wall, no aisles whatsoever, one wall where every single product that they carry is on one wall? Imagine walking into a supermarket where it was designed like that. Nobody would be happy. No, it's not going to work. Anyway, you were going to say something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was going to say that would be chaos, right? Like you try to get that one wall in the supermarket and it just goes on forever, right?
Mhm.
There would never be an order in that wall that would suit everyone. You could go alphabetically, you could go department wise. It just won't suit everyone. But to your point, the only way to get that solution you're going for is from an ISV partner, like an app exchanger. There is no possible way to build a custom solution. Well, actually, I want to correct myself there. There is a way, but it will take years to build, right? Like you don't want to do that. I applaud you in being able to put your hand up and say, I don't want to take this on, right? There are businesses out there, you and I both know this. There are businesses out there that will accept a job for the sake of accepting a job, even though it's 100% not possible and won't tell someone up front. I applaud businesses like yourself. The consultancy I started with was very upfront and it was a small one. So that's what small consultancies are like compared to you look at big ones, there's a lot of differences there. But when coming back to having everything in the one view, the only thing that I know that comes to mind, and it's only after working at Validity, and had I known beforehand, I would have been knocking on the door every day, is GridBuddy. And it's amazing that I get to talk about this because I work with it and manage the product of it. But I can't believe that I'm ended up here, right, in my career. I'm managing a product that solves the supermarket war issue.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So what does it do? I've kept you on your seat here a bit.
Yeah. Let's explain what GridBuddy does for those who are not familiar with it.
Yeah, so GridBuddy Cloud essentially allows you to have any custom or standard object as what we call the primary object, right? So you parent object, and then you can have any number of related or unrelated objects onto that as well. And in that, you can do mass updates, you can mass create, you can even conditionally format all the things that you're used to in Salesforce. You take a list view, for example, but there is no restrictions of record type. There is no restrictions of field type. The only types of fields, obviously, you can't edit are standard system ones. Salesforce ID, you can't edit, created by, last mile, or
Formula fields.
or formula fields. Exactly. Right. We take in consideration your user permissions, your system permissions, everything else. And we're presenting your data in this consolidated view that you can edit, you can manage, right? You don't have to click everywhere around it. And then you can take that and embed that into your Salesforce, onto a Lightning page, wherever you want.
So Andrew, could you give an example of how, let's say, a sales rep can benefit from using GridBuddy Cloud, let's say on an account, they're looking at an account record and the multiple contacts for that associated to that account, they're looking at it in a GridBuddy Cloud view in Salesforce. What kind of magical powers, I'll use that phrase, what kind of magical powers does GridBuddy Cloud provide to that sales rep when working with those contacts?
Yeah. So on the account view, right, we'll take that, for example, you're used to your related lists, right?
Mm-hmm.
GridBuddy Cloud has an ability to take that related list and turn it into what we call tabs and grids. And that makes the related list editable and actionable all in the one place. So you can take your contacts, you can make it an editable tab there, and you can embed it in your account page. You can have your mass updating of those contacts. But to go that step further, not only just having your contacts, but you can have all the tasks and events related to that contact on that page as well. So you've gone that 3 levels down now, right? You're not only on the account level, I'm looking at account ABC, right? You're also looking at contact Andrew, and you're managing his tasks, his events on the same page, his cases, if he has any. Yeah.
So in the end, without
Yeah.
GridBuddy Cloud, the user would have to keep navigating from page to page in order to see all of the tasks associated to that particular contact, and then have to go back a couple of times to get back to the original view. But with GridBuddy Cloud, it's all on one screen. They're still able
Yeah.
to navigate 3 levels deep, but on one screen.
Exactly. And that's the main premise of it. It was developed by a company called AppBuddy, I think about 8 years ago, and Validity acquired AppBuddy about 2 years ago with the whole intent of simplifying your navigation and mass updating and also user adoption. Going back to our theme of user adoption, it gives you that sense that's like that Excel view, right? You've got those, what we call grids, and then Excel is like a grid, and you can just navigate it. You can just manage your records from it. You don't have to retrain your users in all these steps of this is what a field is, this is what an object is. And
It definitely helps ease the burden for those users who are more comfortable working in an Excel-like interface, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The beauty of it is not only do you get it from the Salesforce environment you're in, with GridBuddy Cloud, you can pull data from multiple Salesforce environments. So if we're talking enterprise type setups where you've got multi-org setups, I've got a sales org and I have a service org, and that's 2 different production environments. The best way to make actionable decisions on your customers, Salesforce really drives this in when they're talking about it. We saw it Dreamforce making actionable decisions on your customers is by pooling all that data. And what better way to do it with, this grid-like view? And you can pull it from the service org. And as a salesperson, I can see, right, David's lodged a couple cases recently. He's not that happy. Let's talk to him about that first before we go and try and sell something to him. Let's get this sorted, get him happy again before we can sell to him. Because if you try to sell someone that's not happy, you're losing that opportunity altogether. And you're probably jeopardizing future, right? So you not only damage today's pipeline, but you damage the future pipeline.
Absolutely. Excellent point. Let's talk a little bit about data quality, closely related to user adoption pain points. Let's talk about some data quality issues. Honestly, I think every Salesforce org has, to some extent, data quality issues, because even if we have a rigorous process for getting data into Salesforce to make sure that it's accurate and thorough and complete and all of the required details are there, inevitably people move around, they change, companies move from location to location, they change industries. So existing, or I should call it legacy data, becomes outdated. And there are lots of issues in addition to that. Of course, there's issues with duplicates, erroneous data, half-baked data, etc.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the common issues and insights that you have on dealing with data quality, improving data quality issues in Salesforce.
It's funny that you say like almost every org has it. I watched a Dreamforce speak the other day. It was actually done by a colleague of mine. And the first thing he said was, back when Salesforce was first set up, literally the second user that got into Salesforce probably entered a duplicate. No matter who you go to, no matter which admin you go, if someone was to say to your face straight up, we don't have any duplicates, I would question that quick straight off. No matter what you implement, there will always be a duplicate in your system. There will always be data quality issues. It will be there maybe for a millisecond and then some automation will fix it up. But the point is, it happened in the first place. As an admin and going through the world of consultancy first, I think it's given me a lot of information, a lot of experience of these issues. Dealing with this, I used to stay out countless hours chasing the sun, as we like to call it, where fixing the data issues in production. And those data issues could be as simple as just a duplicate event or a task, which doesn't really mean much on face value. But When you have something like Marketing Cloud plugged in and you rely on those tasks and events to trigger your emails, then that's when it starts to have issues. It's all about the downstream impacts as well as what the users are experiencing. So you've got duplicates as the obvious one there. There is the standardization. So making sure that we're in the world of content personalization right now. Everything needs to be personalized. I'm pretty sure we're so used to it nowadays that if you don't get an email that says, "Hi, Andrew," or "Hi, David," you're thinking to yourself, what's going on here? Is this even for me anymore?
Right.
So even the reminder to come record this, it said, "Hi, Andrew Fragis" on the top of it. That's an element of content personalization. And if the underlying data that's pulled for that is not in the correct state, then it's still going to have a great impact on the customer.
I'll never forget, I was once working with a very large, prominent organization, and it was standard practice in the first name field to do things like Jonathan, in parentheses, prefers John, or president's son-in-law, in parentheses, and that would get merged in the body of an email.
It's also very common practice, not just that, but also having the salutation in it. You've got a separated field right in front of you. And to us as admins, this is so simple, but it's going back to how the legacy systems work. You would have one field for everything, right? And that's the key difference. When you're moving a customer across, you got to educate them on this field does this, field does this. And that's the tedious thing that that sometimes skipped over, right? So it would be Mr. Andrew Fragis, and that would carry over to the full name. So on data migration exercises, you would have to put the data into some sort of SQL server, build out SQL to separate everything, get it matching, and you could never go 100% correct. In my experience, the other issue is incomplete data, you said, or data that is at or parented to the wrong place. So on a migration effort, you're trying to match, and especially the hardest migration efforts are when you have an existing Salesforce system up and running. You're migrating data from a legacy system. You're trying to get it to match. The migrations, you want to map it out first. You want to match it. And then when you go to match it, you got to make sure that it ended up parented to the correct records, right? Because you got a different schema you're going to and everything else. But on top of that, you've got all these processes they're going to start relying on. So one example I had with a big prominent customer that was a global customer, they had subscription records, so which they used as consent, and consent started going everywhere. And that wasn't to do with how the data was migrated. It was actually to do with the fact that they had 5 Andrew Fragises in their old system, each spelt differently, each with a different household relationship and everything else set up, and 5 different forms of consent. Yeah. So how do you take that as a business, not even as a consultant, as a business? How do you take that and make a decision on what do we keep? You've had this data for 10 years. You got the employee that entered the first record no longer works with you, and the employee that entered the recent record has no idea what the first person did.
In a lot of these situations, what I find funny is the organization very often will say, let's simply rely on the email address. The email address is unique. Now, practically everyone that I know has more than one email address. I often tell those clients, I say, you know what? For about 4.5 years, I was working at NBC. At the time, NBC was owned by GE, General Electric. After a few years of working there, GE decided to purchase Universal and merge it with NBC. The day I started the job, I had 2 email addresses. One was david.giller@ge.com. The other one was david.giller@nbc.com. When Universal came into the picture, I got a 3rd email address, which was david.giller@nbcuniversal.com. And then after a brief amount of time, they realized that NBC Universal was too long, so they added another one, which was nbcuni.com. So when I filled out any form for a work-related anything, I could have easily given, not even intentionally, given any one of those email addresses. In a B2C world, on a personal level, people can have, there are many people who still fill out forms referencing their AOL email address, yet they also have a Hotmail and a Yahoo and a Gmail email address. So email address is not reliable as a unique identifier in order to Specify which record should be the master that survives the merge.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hardest bit. And my businesses think email's fine. And it's surprising. We're in 2021. We're learning so much around our data. We're focusing more on our data to make informative decisions. And you still got this, I would say, almost primitive matching technique where it's just email address. That's great when, it doesn't matter if we go down the B2B path or the B2C path. There is so many impacts on either side of doing that. And the rule of thumb that I go by when, talking to businesses today is you want to first build out a profile, right? Realistically of what is your core customer data. And what I mean by that is not every field that's on your contact or your account record, if you're using person accounts, right? It's more of what fields from your contact are used for your downstream efforts. What fields are used for your marketing? What fields are used for your service team and everything else, your sales team to follow up. And once you establish that, let's say, for example, it's first name, last name, you got your salutation, you got email address, and you have address and even phone number. That is your duplicate matching. We've said that becomes your duplicate rule number one. Great. You also collect age and date of birth and stuff like that. But that is crucial to identifying your customer. Right? You can't have an Andrew Fragis living at 123, Fake Street and all the phone number and email address matching to another Andrew Fragis that's a different age. So technically it will be possible but it also is possible at the same time. And I say this because I had this issue growing up. I lived with my grandparents. My grandfather's name is Andrew Fragis as well. So same address. The benefit I had was I come from a Greek background. They migrated from Greece to Australia and he did really pick up email, right? Or technology. So I got the email address and I could get matched up by email address. But it surprised me how many times, back in the day when you have a landline, because I don't even have a landline these days,
Right.
where we would get calls and they would ask for Andrew Fragis. And I'll pick up the phone and go, yep. And they'll start talking. I'm like, oh, hang on a second. Do you mean my grandfather? It's as simple as that. And they're like, oh, yeah. How old are you? And I'm like, 10. And they're like, yeah, definitely not you. But
Talking to you about retirement options.
Oh, yeah. If you like the village down there, it's a nice place. I don't think I'll be going there anytime soon. But yeah, going back to, you want to build that profile, right? You want to know, and it's not just on your contact records, right? That's the simple mistake every business makes. You stop at our customer, but it's also the related data to the customer.
That's right.
Right? Like the opportunity. What's key on the opportunity? Oh, okay. Name. That's the equivalent of saying email address, right? If you say an opportunity name is a unique field. Any free text field? No. I would say by itself is not. In a collection? Yes. If you look at opportunity, you say amount, close date, linked account, or even company name, because sometimes you have a duplicate account and therefore you can't really go off it. Or you have account hierarchy, so you could have Validity as the parent account and then Validity APAC as the child account, and the opportunity should be on the parent level. And you can tell that by something like the contact associated or even the billing address and stuff like that. So the key bit of advice I would give to admins, to businesses, is stop, think about where your data is used, map that out. Map out everywhere where your data is used. And it doesn't even have to be a very sophisticated mapping out. You can do a very easy Lucidchart or something like that, where you get some little boxes together and you go, right, account is used on our Marketing Cloud Sync or with our Pardot or with Marketo or even for Zendesk. We pull the account across, we manage the tickets. And what do we pull across from the account? We pull across the name. Okay. So we need to make sure the name is in a consumable way. So that's standardization. We need to make sure that there is a one-to-one mapping, not a one Zendesk ticket to many accounts, because it's duplicates there. And we got to make sure that everything else is connected properly. So you build out these virtual profiles almost of your customer data. And businesses would say to you, geez, Andrew, that takes a lot of time and a lot of focus. Yeah, but it's going to save you a lot of time in the future.
So let's follow up on the scenario that you described a moment ago, where one of our listeners is a Salesforce admin. They really totally get everything that we're saying about data quality and the pain points around data quality. And they totally understand, like, we need to really take care of it. And the impact from a downstream perspective is tremendous, but they're feeling overwhelmed. They're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to boil this ocean? It's just, even if we just look at one object, there are just so many records to go through, and I'm just one
Yeah.
person and have so many other things that I'm responsible for. So, what would your recommendation be for that admin who wants to start taking care of it, but is just not sure how to go about making it manageable?
The thing I would recommend really is just gather the correct tools to apply for the job. You've done the planning. We talked about doing the planning first, but you need to make sure you have the right tools for the job. And gone are the days of using Excel and VLOOKUPs and data loader and everything else like that. Because if that worked, I would say 5 years ago, not even 10 years ago, systems weren't as complex. People weren't feeding as much data into Salesforce as they are today. Today, businesses are collapsing more and more legacy systems into Salesforce, and that is taking over a lot more. As the Salesforce product grows and it's got, more clouds that adds on, Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, all of them that add on, the more complex it gets. So don't be afraid to look to a solution outside. And it goes same with productivity as well. And Salesforce can do so much. And the reason why it can only do so much is it's not a dedicated duplicate prevention or data quality product. It was never built for that. It was built to be a CRM, right? Customer relationship management system. And it does a fantastic job of being that. When people start to explore these other avenues, data quality, user productivity, and everything else, because they aren't specialized in it. And it's funny, like you always see this issue with consultancies, right? You go to one consultancy, you go, I want to do a health cloud implementation. And they've probably never done it before. You go to another one, they've done health cloud, but they haven't done service cloud. It's all about specialization. And going outside of that is where you should be looking. You have people on the App Exchange, you have partners that can help you out on this. You have even consultants that have the experience. Yeah, you can spend the hours doing it in like a SQL database. I keep referencing SQL, but that's the bread and butter of most setups that I know. You can go down more complex setups and trying to achieve it with something like Flow, right? Again, takes some time, but it's possible to get it. To get something fully thorough, you should look to a company that actually specializes in it, right? Like you look at Validity, for example, we specialize in data quality and user productivity, literally from day dot. And going back to being baffled about where I am today and what I'm doing, I only realized the other day that they have one of the first apps on the App Exchange, and that's Demand Tools, which is a group of ex-admins came together and built this product to make these things that we're suffering through today easier in data quality.
So for folks who are not familiar with Demand Tools, what does Demand Tools do and how does it help?
The best way I could sum it up is it is essentially your Swiss Army knife of data quality, right? It has your deduplication, which is the core functionality. I think that's probably the most popular module, and that applies to any custom or standard object. You don't have that limitation of custom objects. It does it in mass, it does it on enterprise grade levels. We're talking millions of records deduplicated. You've got any custom or standard field you can match up. You've also got standardization of data. And when we talk about data quality, deduping is the first, right? We talked dedupe. You want to standardize it, get it into a consistent format so everyone knows and looks at the data in the correct way, regardless of how it's inputted into the system. Or you've got options around importing data. So before you import, you can match to your existing database. So rather than straight inserting, we all do straight insert a file, you can upsert and use that custom matching logic you can do that. You can fully automate these, and you've got options around reassign ownership. So once the data's cleaned up, once the data's deduplicated, what previously had 5 different owners of it, we need to fix that. We need to make sure the correct owner is there, or even just your general business. You've got new opportunities, new leads coming in. They've been deduped, they've been standardized. How do I make sure that David's leads go to David?
Yeah.
Set up some reassignment rules. And you've also got the ability to assess the quality of your data as you go along. And this is all in the latest Demand Tools V. You know, David, I don't know if you've ever used Demand Tools before, but you might be used to the old fashioned user interface that it has. It is redoing the whole user interface. It had the same UI since release. And the reason why was it was a tool that worked non-stop to let's fix the UI. And now it comes with Mac compatibility as well. And that was
Beautiful.
the team worked really hard on this.
I can imagine. It was a couple of years ago where I found myself having to go and purchase, I'm a Mac guy, having to go and purchase a PC just because one client had Demand Tools and I needed to do work in Demand Tools. And it was easier to purchase an inexpensive PC laptop than it was to install a virtual machine on my Mac. So
Exactly.
I'm intimately familiar with the older user interface and the challenges associated with not being Mac compatible. So it's great to hear. That's absolutely great to hear.
Probably one of the biggest bits of feedback that customers have wanted, right? People like you that have gone and purchased a digital laptop or tried to virtual machine it in. And it's funny the lengths admins would go to just to have these at their fingertips. There was a time, and there still is a time, where employers put as a requirement that you must have used Demand Tools in your past. And it's crazy that I'm here in Sydney, 24 years old, and working with a tool that is so well known in the community.
It's fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing at Validity and how other Salesforce admins can benefit from it?
Yeah, definitely. So at Validity, we have a collection of knowledge from all these people, not even myself, that have been admins, that have experienced the pain. I talk about probably my first sales kickoff, right? It was last year in March. And I saw the first, just before we launched GridBuddy Cloud. And I remember sitting in front of the CEO and just absolutely gobsmacked. And I've got a whole bunch of salespeople around me who don't see the full benefit of having the ability to pull data to one and from multiple Salesforce orgs. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, are you serious? Are you sure this can do this? Or is this just some jazzy stuff? And they're like, no, yeah, have a go, play around. I'm like, wow. So it takes on a combination of all this experience and knowledge on not just the data quality side, but because Validity has 2 parts of the business, the email side as well, which focuses on email deliverability. And when we talk about deliverability, that's going into the inbox, not spam, and having all that tracking. You combine those 2 bits of knowledge, and that makes up almost every single business. Email, data quality. The data quality is what backs the emails, and the email deliverability is making sure you get the most out of your email marketing bucks. You're putting that knowledge together, then we're helping admins, we're helping businesses, making sure that they are making the most out of the money that they're putting into products and they're putting into their company, but also shortening the amount of time. And no longer do you have to stay up late manipulating data because it's the end of the world if you don't do it by tomorrow. You can set up a scenario. You can automate it. You can help users out with GridBuddy Cloud like we talked about. And on top of all that, we've got our educational series. Everyone's gone virtual right now. Even us, in a perfect scenario, I could be sitting with you in a recording room right now, somewhere in the US. But everyone's gone virtual. So we've taken a shift to virtual as well and more of an education path. We're not going to sit here and cram down products and buy, but we've done what's changing. Why is it changing? What are the stats driving these changes? How do you combat this? How do you look into it as an admin? How do you look into it as a market, as a business? Yeah, that's definitely how Validity can help out.
Amazing. For those who are listening to this podcast and want to learn more, I would recommend going either directly to the Validity website, validity.com, or alternatively, you can look on the App Exchange, Demand Tools, or GridBuddy Cloud, where you can also see not only what these products are about, but also to review some of the other ratings by other trailblazers and how these tools have helped them do their jobs with a little bit less pain.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself, David.
Thank you. Andrew, I've got one more question for you. What's one of the toughest lessons you've learned so far within your Salesforce career?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. And you're always learning along the way in your journey. But I think one of the toughest things that I've learned is knowing when to stop and ask what and why. Not just accepting things because someone's asked for it or because it's being proposed. I can admit I'm a very opinionated person, right? I'm willing to talk all the time, but it's knowing when to question what's happening and when not to, and also knowing when the correct input is needed. If a customer comes to you, gives you some requirements and just goes, and a lot of people make the mistake, and even I've made the mistake of going and building it. And then when you get to testing phase, you get someone else from internal to looking at it. They go, why'd you do this? That's been you catching that in the first place, going, why do you want to do this? What are you trying to achieve? If I could leave with a key takeaway here is always ask what and why when you get something to do.
And the goal is really not to push back and certainly not to be a blocker, but to help uncover the underlying root cause problem that they're asking for assistance on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you got to be careful of. You got to find that balance between not being rude and being helpful to the business, right? If you ask in a certain line of questioning, then whoever you're engaging with will feel that it's a bit aggressive, a bit argumentative. You got to ask it in a way that is a bit more, help me understand what you're trying to achieve so I can build a great solution for you. Right?
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast episode. I have no doubt that the listeners to the Brainiac Show are going to love this. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and advice on today's podcast interview.
Thank you, David, for having me. And thanks everyone for listening. It was a great time and can't wait to come back.
Thanks so much. Thank you for listening all the way through to the end of this episode of The Brainiac Show. I appreciate you so much, and I hope that you take some valuable information from this episode and apply it in one way or another into your own Salesforce journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other trailblazers. You know what they say, sharing is caring. Also, don't forget to rate and review this episode on your favorite podcast app like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Audible so that others can discover it more easily.